us at Tulalip, the Restoration, Acquisition, and Stewardship Program, put in a lot of effort to try to accelerate the way that we do restoration. The timelines for this project were actually pretty remarkably fast if we're talking about just from the moment that we hired an engineer to the moment of construction. Amazing collaboration with the Holy Cross Catholic Church. We worked with an HOA with over 16 households that had to vote to approve this project. We're at the Lochsloy Floodplain Restoration Project, a natural resources project that Tulalip Tribes took on in 2021. This project is located on the Pilchuck River between the cities of Granite Falls and Lake Stevens, nearby the State Route 92. When Tulalip first identified this property as a potential site for restoration, we recognized that there is a few constraints for the Pilchuck River and salmon habitat in the Pilchuck River. There was a levee that entrenched the channel of the river. There was lack of wood into the stretch of the river by the location of this project, and also there was very high erosion happening on the property. This was one of the reasons why we so actively pursued acquisition of part of the project site from the Holy Cross Catholic Church, because we wanted to create an opportunity to use the already natural processes in place to create a more suitable habitat for salmon. We secured Pacific Salmon Treaty funding, also known as ORCA funding, that is passed through by NOAA and administered by RCO. We hired an engineer to help us come up with alternatives and designs of how can we make sure that we allow the river enough space to interact with the floodplain, but also create that interaction to be the most beneficial for salmon, but also for people. The alternative that we selected included three main elements of what we were to do in the river. In the last century, because of floodplain modification, farming, and other uses of the floodplain, we have put in place a lot of levees. However, when these levees were put in place, like this one in the 40s, we didn't realize that what they do is they create pretty much the faucet effect. They will not affect the property that they are nearby, but then the properties below would be affected. We decided to remove the levee to the level of which it is the back of the floodplain. But there's a couple of problems here. So when you remove a levee, you have a lot of material. We were lucky that the levee that I'm sitting in front of was made from natural materials. It was actually borrowed on site. So when a levee is made from the materials that are on site, you can pretty much dispose of them on site. What we did is we worked with permitting agencies and the Army Corps of Engineers to be able to just move some of the material from one part of our property to the higher area that it will not affect the flow of the river. Second is, once you remove and start disturbing an area right next to a very big flow, it creates a roughening of the surface. So now if a water flows over it like a sheet, it will take away a lot of the rock and the dirt. That was a problem for us. So how we solved for that is there was a lot of trees on this levee because it was made from natural materials, and over time cottonwood has grown on top of it. We retained all of the trees that we've removed from the levee. We actually put back on top of the levee, and then we jammed them, we secured them in between natural wood piles. In this manner, we are adding to how normal wood loading would happen into a floodplain. But then second, we are keeping the materials that are already there. What that roughening of the floodplain does with the piles and the trees across it, during very, very high flows, it creates areas where the little fishes can hide. It creates prevention from extreme flooding. It prevents a lot of the erosion that we have seen and undercutting that levees provides. Some of the features that used to exist in Pacific Northwest River, Pilchuck included, were these big evergreen trees on the banks that will eventually fall into the river, and they will create over time hundreds and sometimes even thousands of years, they would create these big wood piles that would direct the flow of the river, not only direct the flow, but kind of slow down that sediment deposition and will spread it out. So the other elements that when we're doing the modeling, if we were to add big structures, they are called engineered log jams. What these engineered log jams are intended to do is to mimic natural log jams that would have been in the river. So we have 4 large jams, 2 are keyed in to the bank and they have their own function, and 2 are apex jams, we call them. They are intended to be in the middle of very high flow and to split the flow and to create different redistribution of gravels and cool off areas. From the large ones, each one of them has almost 200 pieces of wood. Each one of them has anywhere 10 to 15 piles, big piles that are driven up to 25 feet into the ground. In front of them, they have these 10-foot scour pool, which means there's these deep areas on the front, so the fishes can chill and relax, and then water would come over them, and then a bunch of smaller wood and larger wood is placed on top of them, jammed between the piles, and then big trees are put on top and they are secured with metal ties to the piles. What we're creating is a starter jam for other trees to pile on top of it. We have 4 of those on the kind of northern part of the project site, and then we have 3 smaller ones on the lower end. It was very fun to see these being built. I was not sure how long these will take because I've never seen one of these being built from beginning to end. First of all, we had to isolate all of the river from the actual construction, and then we had to defish the area before we can start work. So that is a monumental task when you're working on a river. We worked with our department, with our Washington Conservation Corps crew. We worked with our contractor to put sandbags on the top of the areas where the river was diverted away from the construction of these jams. Working in the river, especially installing anything in the river, is how is the excavator going to go through the river? Our contractors came up with a cool way to be able to cross the river. They installed these temporary bridges in which the equipment would go from one shore to the other one without actively driving equipment through. When we look at maps and when we look at an aerial photography of this area, it is very noticeable that there is a huge wetland that exists on the other side of the former levee. And this wetland, it's about 9 acres. It's a very productive wetland. It's surface connected wetland originally, but over time, because of the levee and because of how constrained that inlet was to the wetland, those inlets filled up. Floodplain reconnection with wetlands has been identified as one of the major limitations of the Pilchuck for salmon habitat. We created an element in which just north of the former levee, there is a channel that at its widest is about 130 feet, I believe. At the narrowest, it's about like 40, and it's dropped about anywhere from 3 to 5 feet from its original elevations to reconnect the river, high flows from November to January. Right now, the river connects to the wetland only on average a day in a year. We are expecting for the river to connect at least 2 to 3 weeks. We're not expecting for this channel to function as a side channel indefinitely. What we are trying to create is availability for coho for at least the first 10 to 15 years to access that wetland. We are expecting that the channel that we created will engage at about less than 2-year flows. The reconnection predicted for here is for flows of about 1800 CFS. When the river reaches that level, this is how we've designed it. We're expecting the channel to engage. The rest of the 6 jams will actually engage even at lower flows than that. That means that there will be no detrimental erosion action. This project, over the course of its review and over the course of its design, I'm not over-exaggerating when I will say it crossed the desk of over 100 to 150 people, and it was scrutinized by experts of every major facet of funding, of permitting, of expertise of fish and salmon recovery, of flood hazard permitting. But I'm grateful to have a team to lead the way, and then looking forward to us doing even more of these projects, because now we are showing that it's possible and we can accelerate recovery if we work in a coordinated effort, if we work together, and if we hold each other accountable and just try to, all of us, have a goodwill to push these forward.